in the Franciscan world, and based on St. Francis' experience, why the term in fraternitas, the Latin phrase, is more of a term that we would use. And that simply pushes the envelope a little bit on solidarity. And it speaks of a kind of familial relationship where we see one another and all of the creatures in the world as brother and sister. And so there's a sense of this being a much more personal and kind of particularized relationship where we recognize our common origins one with the other, but also to see that our very existence is truly a gift from God. And in light of that, then, particularly among Christians, we see this as a call to a lifestyle that is a shared lifestyle based on gospel values, and that the notion of brotherhood and sisterhood is really given to us at the very moment of creation. So when we look at a life of fraternitas, it really calls us to strive for a deeper bond with one another so that there is a true and genuine kind of caring based on God's love and goodness that we would expound and see as kind of a central value for our whole life. So this bondedness is a kind of a full communion of diverse individuals that leads us then to not leave anyone in a deprived state or in a place where they are being oppressed or in any way dominated in a way that is unjust. So I think that's Francis' embodiment of this notion of solidarity, but even deepened by the notion of in fraternitas. Well, certainly our maltreatment of creation does exacerbate the poor in the fact that usually they live in areas of the world that are quite vulnerable. They're often in places that are in areas of the city where most of the pollution lands, whether it's through landfills or other kinds of industrial waste that gets put in their backyard sometimes. And so all of those things too are more immediate in just day-to-day life. But then there are those regions of the world that are more vulnerable in terms of fires and in terms of storms and the rising temperatures that we experience. And so as we would look at this from Francis' perspective, I think he would, first of all, ask us to change our vocabulary, to not talk about the poor, but rather our sisters and brothers who suffer from our burdening them with different kinds of situations, whether it's social policy or simply our attitudes toward them. Also, he would ask us to go to meet people who are poor and to really get to know them and find out what life is truly like for them. And perhaps we would have a very different perspective when it comes to trying to resolve some of the difficulties that they're confronted with on a daily basis. Everyone has a universal right, really, to the goods of creation that are sufficient for a healthy life and a life of dignity. And that, in fact, human beings truly do have distinctive gifts of all the created creatures. But nonetheless, we are not the masters of creation. That, in fact, is God's unique role. And then finally, I think as we face the causes of global warming, I think Francis would help us understand that this truly is a sin. As a matter of fact, in recent days, in the spring and summer of July of 2014, why we have both Pope Francis and the Orthodox Patriarch Bartholomew I really reinforcing that this treatment of creation is truly sinful. And so being in a state of sin requires that we would work toward conversion. And again, I think Francis would bless us and would send us on our way to become the guardians of creation. So To care for creation is not only a moral obligation, but it is truly a sacred trust and an act of praise and thanksgiving.